Hey, Glenn, what's next on the agenda for the return of the Seattle Sonics?
I got 4 words for you. Sonics coach Tom Thibodeau. Huh? Huh? Welcome to Rain City Rebound, the podcast where we cover the return of the Sonics. I'm Glenn Dreyfus. So don't wait for the NBA to approve expansion. Don't wait for the naming of an ownership group. Don't wait for a general manager. In fact, don't wait for an actual team. Hire Tibbs now. Zaiem, you feeling me?
Well, you first need a team before you hire a coach is generally the order and where things go, because sequencing matters in many things in life. And hiring a coach before getting a team is probably not the right sequence, although that is a really interesting one because Tibbs is a really interesting coach. But regarding a new team, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver had some pretty interesting things to say at his pre-finals press conference.
The current sense is we should be exploring it. I don't think it's automatic because it depends on your perspective on the future of the league. You know, as I've said before, expansion in a way is selling equity in the league. And if you believe in the league, you don't necessarily want to add partners.
So I think the first part of there is really interesting, which is I say the current sense is we should be exploring it being expansion. We should be exploring it. So this is more definitive language than we have heard from Adam Silver in the past. Expansion is not on the table. We are not looking at expansion. Someday we might have expansion. You know, my sense is at one point we will consider looking at it. Really vague things. Now, this is also vague, and I understand, and there's a lot of parsing and nuance here, but we should be exploring it is a definitive statement that we have not yet heard from the NBA commissioner so far.
And if he hadn't gotten at least a wink and a nod from some members of the Board of Governors, I don't think he would have been comfortable making that statement, because just as the Kraken ownership group has said, they don't want to get ahead of the commissioner. I don't think the commissioner wants to get ahead of the owners. So I took that as a hopeful sign.
Yeah, I don't think Adam Silver's doesn't seem like a loose cannon who's just going off the cuff and just starts saying things that the owners are like, what? Did anyone talk to him about this? Well, he's gone rogue. Adam Silver does not seem like the kind of person to just go rogue. So this has been a topic of discussion seemingly since Adam Silver took over from the late David Stern over a decade ago about NBA expansion, specifically expansion to Seattle. So there has clearly been a lot of thought and time and effort and things behind the scenes put into this to get us to this point. And so there's just this mountain of stuff behind the scenes that isn't visible to us that is clearly happening.
Well, the Chinese proverb is a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So while it seems like it's still 1,000 miles away, you have to take that first step. And the first step is actually talking about it in the room with the people who are actually going to vote whether to do it or not. So this is a necessary, needed first step. And sometimes, you know, you get on that entrance ramp and you get going and things can start then happening a lot faster.
It's like being stuck at the airport. If you've ever had like a really bad airport travel day, the flight was canceled and there's weather, and maybe you were stuck in a place for even 2 or 3 days, and the gate agents, they don't know what's going on, and you're just sitting there and you're like, nothing is happening. But what really is happening is there's all this stuff happening behind the scenes. The maintenance crew they're repairing the broken landing gear, and the flight coordinators are rescheduling all the flights and moving people to the right gates, and whatever else happens in the aviation industry, which I don't understand very well. But there's all these things that happen. And you're just sitting there at the terminal and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting. You're like, nobody's doing anything. And then at some point, the ice cube melts and you're on the plane and took way longer than you thought it would, and you're frustrated, but you eventually always get home. And I think right now we are waiting in the airport. We've been waiting for the last 17 years. It's been a real long flight delay. And it feels like what it feels like waiting in the airport for 17 years.
To extend your analogy, once you're back home and sleeping in your own bed, you don't think so much about the wait that was maddening as hell while you were waiting. But that kind of goes away. And once the Sonics are back, we're not going to be thinking so much as we are today about how long it took to get them back.
Right. Like, I've had some really terrible travel days, and I haven't really thought about them until this analogy, and was thinking like, oh yeah, that's right. Remember that time I was stuck there? But once you're home, and then it doesn't matter anymore. And when the Sonics get here, it's not going to matter anymore. So right now, there's all this stuff that's happening behind the scenes, and there are all these machinations that some of which we can see, some of which we can't see. Part of what we can see is like building Climate Pledge Arena, which was its own gigantic project, right? Which is a prerequisite for getting the Sonics here. And so I want to caution people who feel discouraged that like we are hearing the same thing, and these are just vague statements by the commissioner, and he's just more, nothing committal or definitive. Because it's a slow process, it's a deliberate process, and as much as I want to be tempted to be like, yep, the Sonics are coming back for sure. I'm going and getting a Gary Payton tattoo or whatever, but we don't want to get ahead of the commissioner. We want to make sure that we don't say something that we're overpromising the reality here. I think it is very, very, very likely that the Sonics come back. But
do you want to see my Gary Payton tattoo?
No, we don't. No.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Go on.
Whew.
Hey, the commish had more to say.
Oh, he sure did.
On the other hand, that we recognize there are underserved markets in the United States and elsewhere. And I think markets that deserve to have NBA teams, probably even if we were to expand, more than we can serve. But we have a owners meeting in July in Las Vegas, and will be on the agenda to take the temperature of the room. We have committees that are already talking about it. But my sense is at that meeting, they're going to give direction to me and my colleagues at the league office that we should continue to explore it.
So the commish says he's going to take the temperature of the room. And if I had eyebrows, I might raise one of them just a little bit. I don't completely buy that, because I do buy how smart Adam Silver is. As a commissioner, you're checking the thermostat several times a day, and it would be malpractice not to know how owners feel at least a little bit about expansion. And Silver is smarter than that. And what I would add to that is, it is fair to speculate, Zaiem, that some owners may need to be won over to the idea of expansion.
Yeah, and I want to first go back to something that Adam Silver said in that second clip there, which is that we have an owners meeting in July in Las Vegas. And now we have a specific time, which again is the most specific that we have gotten since Adam Silver took over as commissioner, since the Sonics left. And he then says it will be on the agenda to take the temperature of the room. So again, I just really want to repeat it sounds like it's all this like non-committal, like, well, my sense is at the meeting we're going to take a temperature. And if you focus on that and you're going with the idea that like, okay, Adam Silver is never going to say anything committing, and the Sonics are never coming back, and they're just jerking Seattle around. If that's your mindset and that's what you want to read into it, then you're going to find those things there. But if you're looking at this and saying, okay, well, this is different than what the commissioner has said in the past, and these are specific statements. One thing about taking the temperature of the room, which I don't really get is it's July in Vegas. It's going to be 115 degrees. I can just tell you that right now, man. Like it's not. It's going to be hot. Like I don't like Commissioner Silver. It's going to be hot in Vegas in July. I don't know if he's ever been there. I assume he has, but yeah, it's a desert. So he can skip that step. Temperature of the room very hot.
Well, let's make this point also. The NBA owners, the smart ones, and these got to be smart guys, or else they wouldn't have the organization to be NBA owners. They will see inviting Seattle into their club as an investment. They should want to be in the Samantha Holloway business. They should want to be in the Todd Lywicki business, because like any good investment, it's for the long haul. And those people and the Kraken ownership group as a group, they will grow the NBA business for everybody. So while the slices of the pie may shrink initially, well, you had 30 slices, now you're going to have maybe 31 or 32 slices. Holloway and Lywicki and company, they're creators, they're innovators, and they will improve any enterprise and have proven that they'll improve any enterprise that they're a part of. And you'd have to be looking very short term to conclude otherwise.
Yeah, especially even if you are looking short term, you're still getting an expansion fee. Yeah. It's going to be, multiple billions from each team. So we're presuming 2 new teams will be added. And so, somewhere between 3 and 7 billion, somewhere in there per team. So 6 billion divided by 30 ways is, what is that, 500 million? 50.
Or you carry the billion and yeah.
So,
well, and listen, the Kraken ownership group,
200 million.
Much as this is a civic benefit to Seattle, they're also in this to make money, and they should be. So if they make money, they're going to make money for their partners as well. So this is really a win-win situation, and you'd have to be a curmudgeon in that room to believe that this is going to cost any of the other owners, money in the long run. It's not.
Yeah. So the first clip that Adam Silver says, as I said before, expansion is in a way selling equity. And if because you are splitting 30 into 32. And we also might get a sense that maybe, as you said, not every owner is fully on board. And so Bill Simmons, who owns the Ringer and has covered the NBA and is very well connected in the NBA, he had a very interesting thing to say on his podcast the other day.
And the Dolan Adam Silver thing is just bizarre. This is the feud that everybody in the league talks about, but nobody actually talks about out loud, right? I mean,
we're doing it right now. Stories have been written about it.
No, but
James Dolan writes angry correspondence frequently.
I think it's way angrier and weirder. Like at this point, he's just the dissenting vote, and basically any chance he can get, he's going to do it. And it's just gotten super weird.
James Dolan, by even a charitable opinion of it, is a contrarian now. And
this is New York Knicks owner James Dolan, just to
owns clarify. The Rangers, owns the Knicks, owns Madison Square Garden, owns the MSG cable network, among other things. And regarding the most recent reason he was in the news, which was the firing of Tom Thibodeau as coach, if that firing was on Rotten Tomatoes, it would have gotten a score of an 8 or a 9. Overwhelmingly negative reviews. And this is why we're always told sports is a results-driven business. Well, Tibbs got the results. 10 postseason wins. Only 2 teams in 2025 have more postseason wins, and they made the finals.
And this is a Knicks' first conference finals appearance in over 20 years, right? So it's not like that they made the conference finals 4 years in a row and lost all 4 and then they're firing the coach because they're trying to get somebody who can kind of take them, over the top. I will say, and we can talk about the Knicks in a little bit, that there is, I'm gonna defend some of James Dolan's points of view here. So first, let's stay on the NBA expansion and the financial reasons for that, and then we can talk about how that relates to Tom Thibodeau and whether the Knicks should have fired him or not. New York is one of the big revenue teams, and if you're going to have revenue sharing, then the large revenue teams are going to subsidize the smaller revenue teams. And so from a financial incentive standpoint, the Knicks don't want that pie to be diluted any further. Now, to your point, the amount of money coming in is going to go up, and so each slice gets larger, even if there are more of them. But if you are thinking in a very short-term sense, then it does make some sense if you are a very high revenue team like the Knicks to resist this a little bit. Now, that being said, I think he has been more contrarian than I would have expected, and has been a little almost like openly contemptuous of the league. As Bill Simmons said, like, it's weird. And they didn't talk beyond just the clip we had, so we didn't get any more context of like, well, what's going on. It's the feud that everybody knows but no one's talking about. And so we have this here from James Dolan. I'm just going to read this here after the media rights deal was signed. The NBA has made the move to an NFL model, de-emphasizing and depowering the local market. Soon, your only revenue concern will be the sale of tickets and what color next year's jersey will be. Don't worry, because due to revenue pooling, you'll be guaranteed to be neither a success nor a failure.
Whew. He is missing the point that the Knicks and the Lakers and the Bulls have to have someone to play. People aren't going to pack Madison Square Garden for Knicks intra-squad games. You got to have a team in Denver and a team in San Antonio, a team in Memphis. You got to have a league full of teams, and all the cities aren't the same size and the same TV market. So you've got to work with your partners, rising tide lifts all boats and all that. And yeah, I understand it's more valuable to own a Knicks franchise than it is an Indiana Pacers franchise, and you hate having to equal those things out. But it really wouldn't benefit James Dolan if the teams had an incredible disparity that would mean only 3 or 4 teams could possibly win every year.
Also, the NFL model, as if the NFL is doing poorly. The NFL is a $19 billion business and the NBA is around $12 billion. So it is a much, much bigger enterprise. And the reason for that, a major reason for that, is because of the revenue sharing. It is because the Packers and the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs, can like realistically be like year after year contenders and not have to worry about media market size limiting their ability to generate revenue and therefore be competitive with the larger media market. The NFL model has been so good for not just those teams, but then also the owners of the Jets and the Giants and the Rams and Chargers and the ones in the big market cities, because the NFL is so popular in all of these other markets, and everybody tunes in and watches, and just a rising tide lifts all ships. And the NFL is so much better off because of the NFL model that James Dolan, derides so much. But this is good for you. This is what you want, because if it's just weird to me to look at the NFL and say, yeah, these guys were way more successful than us. Yeah, we don't want to be them.
Well, I will refer you back to an Adam Silver quote, the always diplomatic Adam Silver, who said of James Dolan, he's a complicated man. And if you want to go back to David Stern, and you mentioned him, the commissioner before Silver, he said of the Knicks, which is about as irreverent a comment as you're going to get from a commissioner. He said the Knicks are not a model of intelligent management.
I'm glad you pulled that quote because I also pulled that quote for today. Yes, exactly. Not a model for intelligent management. So, it does seem like he may not be the only one who's opposing expansion here. I do want to put just one more thing though, at Dolan's statement, which I found really funny, which is this, of course, to get there, the league must take down the successful franchise and redistribute to the less successful. This new media deal goes a long way to accomplishing that goal. So
it depends how you define success. If you define it by bringing in the most bucks, then I guess the Knicks are a tremendously successful franchise. If it's about winning championships and winning rounds in the playoffs, not so much.
Yeah.
So how are we defining success? The NBA is going to have its 7th or 8th consecutive different champion, depending on when you're listening to this, if the Pacers or the Thunder have won the title. But I think it's healthy for the league that so many teams can go into a season believing we've got a shot. And let's hope when the Sonics do stock that roster when they come back, that they're given a roster that has a decent shot to make the playoffs coming out of the gate too, because that's what's good for the league as well.
Yeah, it's a miserable feeling going into an NBA season or going into an era and feeling like there's no chance that my team will ever win a title because they play in the wrong market, which has been the experience for NBA fans for a long time. And this most recent collective bargaining agreement, while it is really disruptive for people who want to sustain, year after year dynasties, if you want to see, the Warriors or the Lakers or the mid-90s Bulls or the Spurs, that's going to be a lot harder. But as you said, the last 7 years, and we are absolutely not considering if Oklahoma City wins, that is a first championship, not their second. They do not claim the Sonics title, which when the Sonics come back will officially return back to Seattle should the new Sonics organization exercise that option, which I am.
Amen. Now back to Thibodeau. If the issue was him not playing his bench enough, that shouldn't be a firing offense, at least not right away. Give the man who's had so much success, despite that, a chance to evolve. And another point, if management is going to insist on more rest for starters, then you have to give the coach leeway to win a few less games in the regular season. Because what do coaches always say when they're asked why they did what they did and make the decisions that they did? Because they'll say it gave them the best chance to win. So if you're going to look like we were talking about for the ownership group, long-term success, playoff success, then as an ownership group, you have to be willing to give up a couple of regular season wins to get that playing time.
Yeah, but even when the Knicks, there was a game against Cleveland this season, and the Knicks won by 25 or 20, and even in blowout time, the Knicks, Tom Thibodeau still played 4 of the starters. When they towards the end of the season, when the seeding was basically set, and you don't need to win every game for seeding, he's still running his starters into the ground. It's been really, really, really tough. And I think that, because the players were also, saying something about it. I haven't heard too many players complain about getting too much playing time, but Mikal Bridges did. He said it's not fun on the body. And he said that, we have a lot, quote, we have a lot of good guys on this team that can take away minutes. It's just helps keeping fresh bodies out there. And
maybe he's right, but Jalen Brunson didn't mind, and he didn't mind Thibodeau. And again, I just don't think it's a firing offense. I think it's a sit the guy down and say, you know what? You don't want to burn out your starters.
But that's who he is. That's who he's always been. I don't know if you're going to get Thibodeau to change. That's right. And also the Knicks were lucky, but if you play your players that many minutes, you run into injury risk. I was really, this whole season, I found the minutes usage of the players by the Knicks to be malpractice. And it has been a theme that I watched closely over the season. I think Thibodeau is a really good coach. I think that he's probably has a short shelf life because of the way he plays. But I think that the minutes usage was negligent. It was negligent. It was malpractice. It is irresponsible and inexcusable. Just absolutely inexcusable. When you're up 25 points, or it was 24. When you're up 24 points and you're still playing your starters, because what are you doing, man? And then in the Pacers series, their starters, they were tired. So now they're bringing in their bench players, but they haven't gotten any practice. They don't know what the rotations are. They don't know what the matchups are. They don't have any sense of continuity because you haven't used your bench at all. And now you're in this playoff series against a team that is beating you, partially maybe because your starters are so tired and you don't have a playable bench. And this is all a disaster of your own making because maybe you should have played those guys during garbage time and during those games that don't matter. But no, it's really important to get Jalen Brunson his 46 minutes a game. And
maybe Thibodeau didn't think the bench was any good.
Who knows? It's not like we ever got a chance to find out. And you know what? If you don't develop your bench, you're probably not going to win a title. Like, it's just, you can't win.
Maybe you're right about the short shelf life because Thibodeau is now on a list of 2 NBA coaches. So he was fired in Chicago after back-to-back 50-win seasons. And then he was fired in New York after back-to-back 50-win seasons. He's the second coach in NBA history with that dubious distinction. And the first one has a Sonics connection because the first one who was fired twice after back-to-back 50-win seasons was George Karl.
Yeah. Was that with the Nuggets or Kings?
I think it was the Nuggets after the Sonics.
Yeah.
You see how the NBA lost its collective mind, NBA media anyway, because of this firing. Part of that was because the Knicks, in my opinion, hid behind a press release. They trotted out the old chestnut. And Jolie, if you'll put this press release up on screen, this one is so generic and used by so many front offices. I swear it was created by AI, except this excuse is so worn it's been used since AI meant Allen Iverson. We've decided to go in a different direction. Is it even necessary to say this when you fire someone? Isn't it obvious, Zaiem? We, as an organization, we're going to be over here. We want you, because we fired you, way over here, going in a different direction.
Who says, well, actually, no, we fired our coach, but we're staying in the same direction. Yep, full speed ahead. Nobody does that. That's what happens when you fire your coach. By definition, you're going in a different direction. It is. I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that that's how it was done. It's not everybody has the luxury of having an ownership group that is willing to take accountability for these things in a real public way where they face the media and they face the questions. And granted, maybe the New York media is a little nicer than the media out here in Seattle, but I just firing via press release and no follow-up is really strange way to go about your business.
You are, if this is mathematically possible, 110% right. Because another thing Dolan did with this move is make the Kraken ownership group look even better. Here's how. The Kraken of the NHL fired their coach. They've done it in back-to-back seasons. And when they held a press conference, there was Holloway and there was Lewicki taking questions. I asked them both, is it fair to question the judgment of ownership? And I said that to the owners. And to his everlasting credit, Todd Lewicki said, yes, it's fair. So here's the point. It's not about whether you agree with the decisions. It's whether they stand publicly behind those decisions. That's what fans really want.
The Seattle media, especially for this most recent one, and I want to say that the Kraken owners, this is relevant because these are also the Samantha Holloway, the Kraken owner, would be the presumptive Sonics owner should we get an expansion team in Seattle. And the questions were tough. They were pointed. Your question was pointed. I asked if they perceived or were worried about the perception of being a volatile organization, having 3 coaches in 3 years. And, and they answered that very, plainly and honestly, and without any vitriol or annoyance or bitterness. And, afterwards there was clearly no animosity with the Jason Botterill, the GM, or Todd Lewicki about these questions. It's just part of the course. And I think they understand that media is important, and media helps grow your game. It helps, spread your product to the audience that you want. And that long-term thinking and not short-term thinking is something that doesn't seem to exist everywhere in the NBA.
Well, let's close with this. I want to read you a portion of a Spokane Spokesman Review column by sports editor Ralph Walter. He raises 2 points. One is rooted in reality, the other in fantasy land. Here's the first one. Quote, if expansion does happen, NBA expansion, a Seattle franchise would need a G League affiliate where it could develop its players. Why not Spokane? Call them the Subsonics. I don't know about that actual name, but the location has some merit. Gonzaga's in the neighborhood. The city has hosted NCAA men's and women's tournament games and will again. The Spokane Hoop Fest is a giant 3-on-3 tournament, and it's only a flight of an hour from Seattle. Although, to be fair, those small plane seats can be hard on someone who's 6'10", and I know this because those plane seats are hard on someone who's 5'10".
Spokane's a good location for a G League team. And G League teams don't have to be in the same geographical area as the NBA team. Most of them do, but there's a handful that don't. For example, like Denver's G League team is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But so Spokane feels like a really natural place for them to be. Everett, all of this is, where's an arena, which is the eternal question that was why the Sonics left in the first place, and how they're able to come back is where are these going to play, and where would the G League play? They could. I don't know if the hockey arenas are equipped for NBA, like Shower Center or the one up in Everett.
Yeah, Kent or Angel of the Winds in
yeah.
Everett. And I'm going to guess that they are.
Yeah.
But in addition to those 2 places, Tacoma, I think, would show some interest. Maybe even Bellingham or places in central Washington. I think you're going to see a surprising amount of interest in grabbing the Sonics G League team. I think this is, especially with places where there is a big interest in college basketball, there will be recognizable names.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I also wonder if the G League team would start play the same time as the Sonics, or if it would come earlier, presumably not later. But I don't know if what the timing is there. But you don't have to have, I don't think you need to have a full NBA expansion draft and all that to start a G League team. So that'll be something that we can look into and keep an eye on. But I don't think it's given.
In the future, when they do place this team, maybe the long odds might be that even one of the casinos might have a facility where they'd want to place a team. So I think there's just a world of options for the G League team if it happens. Now, the fantasy suggestion from the sports editor, Walter, quote, let Bennett, meaning OKC owner Clay Bennett, take the expansion franchise the NBA is going to award, give it to Oklahoma City and build his own team to play in the new arena. That's all he really wanted when he bought the Sonics anyway, and give Seattle the franchise back. Think of it as a trade, a young Durant and Westbrook for Chet Holmgren and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That seems pretty fair. How would you like that trade, Zaiem?
I think that's fair, and because I'm a generous person. We'll even say that the Sonics will have to participate in the expansion draft. So they can only protect whatever the number is. And then Oklahoma City, they can take Lou Dort or whoever is unprotected, and then they get that player back. I think that is completely fair because they just wanted a team. They didn't care what the team was. And then Seattle, they get all the Durant history back. They get the Westbrook history back. They drafted, and you know what? We can even make Shai Gilgeous-Alexander feel at home. We can chant like "free throw merchant," as he's, making some ridiculous move to draw a foul call, which that's his game. So, which is, I guess that's how you win MVPs in this league.
Well, here it is. It's 45 minutes, and we've solved all the NBA's problems. So I just want to say to everybody in the basketball community, you're welcome.
We are heroes, Glenn. We are truly heroes. With that, I don't think we have anything else unless you have something, Glenn.
I have something. I hope it's not catching.
Well, thank you everybody for listening. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you could give a like and subscribe, that would help us a lot. And otherwise, thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you on the rebound.